Hi, everyone. Good morning. Good afternoon. I can see we have already 150 people in the lobby and counting. I think we'll get started, but we should have some more audience members coming in as we go. So again, a very good morning and good afternoon to most of you, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Arun Gupta from RapidAML. I'm joined by Deepali Vora today. And our session today is about cutting through the complexity of UAE KYC compliance and giving you practical, relevant takeaways that you can apply in your organizations and your teams. We've got a very packed session ahead, and I'm very glad you can make the time to be here. We'll go to the next slide. Yeah. So let's start by showing you how today's session has come together. On the regulatory expertise side, we have Niema, who are the specialists in AML consulting across sectors in the UAE and GCC, with a deep understanding of current RegTech capabilities. On the technology side, you have Factum, a SaaS application development team focused on financial crime compliance, building cloud-native, scalable solutions that address the realities compliance teams face today. RapidAML is where these two strengths meet. It combines Niema's practical on-the-ground compliance expertise with Factum's technology innovation. And that means RapidAML is not just software. It's a solution shaped by the regulatory realities you live with and the technical capabilities needed to manage them efficiently. This partnership is what allows us to deliver both regulatory accuracy and operational agility. And that's exactly what today's conversation is about. Speaking of regulatory expertise, let me introduce today's lead speaker, Deepali Vora. Deepali is a certified AML specialist with deep expertise in enterprise-wide risk assessments, CDD, sanctions program design, and implementation. She's worked with organizations across the region to raise compliance standards and align operations with both global and UAE-specific AML and CFT requirements. And just a little brief introduction for me. I'm Arun Gupta. I focus on market engagement for RapidAML, working closely with TNFPBs, banks, fintechs, PSPs, and other regulated entities to help them navigate compliance challenges and modernize their approach. I'll be handing it over to Deepali just now, and I'll rejoin you toward the end and throughout the session as well. Thank you all very much. Over to you, Deepali.
Thank you, Arun, for the introduction. So, as Arun mentioned, today we are going to talk about the AML safety regulations in United Arab Emirates, and we are going to specifically focus on the KYC regulations. So, starting from the start. So let's talk about the AML regulations or laws which are implemented in United Arab Emirates. So the first was about Federal Decree Law number 20 of 2018, which on anti-money laundering and combating the financing of terrorism. After that came in Federal Decree Law number of 26. So basically, Federal Decree Law number 26 is amending the regulation, that is Federal Decree Law number 20. Now, Federal Decree Law talks about what are the obligations of DNFPBs, to whom it is applicable, but Cabinet Decision number 10 of 2019 talks about how are you going to fulfill the obligations which are mentioned in Federal Decree Law. Cabinet Resolution number 24 of 22 amended certain provisions of Cabinet Decision number 10 of 2019. To just highlight few definitions were added, and the applicability was expanded to virtual asset service providers also. This was about, your AML CFT compliances, but there's also one of the regulations that is about Cabinet Resolution number 74 of 2020, which talks about screening. Now, screening a customer before onboarding is something which is applicable to every industry who is operating in United Arab Emirates. It's not just applicable to DNFBP, FIs or, the VASPs, but making sure that the customers that you onboard are not related to any sanction list. Okay, that is the obligation that every organization has. Every natural and legal person who are operating in United Arab Emirates, that's their obligation to check. Cabinet Decision number 16 of 2021 talks about the fines and penalties in case if you fail to comply with the regulations of AML CFT. Cabinet Decision number 109 of 2023 talks about the obligations of maintaining the UBO registers and promptly informing to your supervisory authority in case if there are any changes. So that rules and regulations are stated in Cabinet Decision number 109. So this acts as base of what kind of rules and regulations are being implemented in United Arab Emirates. In addition to this, you also have rule books which are specific to some zones, like ADGM has their own rule book, DIFC has their own rule book, Ministry of Economy has come up with various guidance note for us to understand that in case of let's say address verification, how will you do it? If you are doing ID verification, what are the possible options you have? So that explanations are provided in the guidance note. Moving ahead, so this chart that you are looking at currently, okay, gives you a brief, I would say a bird eye view about what your obligations are if you are operating in United Arab Emirates and AML CFT law is applicable to you. So before I start explaining each of this point, I'll just give you a brief introduction about what DNFBPs are. So there are overall 5 industries which are currently covered in the definition of DNFBP. First, dealers in precious metals and stones, real estate agents and brokers, accountants and auditors, corporate service providers, and the last is independent lawyers and professionals. They are covered under the definition of DNFBP. In addition to that, financial institutions were already covered since quite a long time, and recently in 2022, when the rules and regulations were amended, the applicability was also expanded to the VASPs. So basically these 12 points are your I would say your checkpoints that you have to follow this. So the first point, appointment of an AML CFT compliance officer. So if you are a DNFBP, if AML CFT law is applicable to you, okay, you have to appoint an AML compliance officer who will oversee how you are complying with the rules and regulations. They'll make sure that you are basically, point number 1 will oversee everything from point number 2 to 12. Okay, so point number 2, GoAML registration. So at the time of GoAML registration, you have to communicate, or let's say you have to seek the approval of first the supervisory authority to appoint a person as the compliance officer. Once point number 1 and 2 is done, the next step is about money laundering and financing of terrorism risk assessment. So point number 3 is more about evaluating the risk of your organization if you are operating in the UAE economy. Okay, so let's say you are a real estate agent and broker. So if majority of your clientele is high net worth individual, the risk is certainly going to be high because the kind of the customers you are onboarding are risky. If you have majority PEP, then again the risk is very high. But if your clientele is medium-sized persons, most of the transactions are happening through mortgage. Okay, so the risk is going to be relatively less compared to the other 2 examples which I gave. So here you are going to understand the overall risk of your organization depending upon the kind of the customers you deal with. How are you onboarding them? How are you concluding the transaction? Okay, where are they belonging to? What is their nationality? So all of these factors are considered, and at the end you reach to a conclusion that my overall risk is, let's say, high, but because I have lot my mitigation plan, like how I'm going to deal with such risk, my risk has come down to medium. But again, when we do this money laundering and financing of terrorism risk assessment, we are also required to look at the national risk assessment which was issued by UAE government recently. So it has to be in line with that. In addition to that, we have various guidance notes which are available which could be referred. Once we have understood the risk that our organization is going to face, the next step would be drafting our manuals, that is AML CFT policies and procedures. That what are the risks that I have considered? What are the documents that I'm going to seek when it comes to KYC? How will I do screening? What would be my thresholds? How I'm going to monitor the transactions? So basically, whatever is written in the law, okay, we are going to put it up as our manual. Okay, there are some points that you want to be more stringent, you can do that, but we have to make sure that any point of time the police policies and procedures are not inconsistent with the law. Okay, so let's say the law says you have to maintain the record for 5 years. You can take up voluntarily and say that I'll maintain for 8 years, but you cannot take the leverage and say that okay, I'll maintain only for 3 years. So that's the difference. Once you have your policies and procedures in place, we have to make sure that the staff which is working in our organization, employees, senior management, MLRO, they are aware about what their obligations are. You cannot expect a person to follow or let's say comply with the law unless they don't know anything about it. So first, it's important that we train them. Bare minimum, what their role is. On the basis of that, we provide them the required training. Senior management should be aware about the obligations that they have in AML CFT. Your onboarding team should know about KYC, suspicious activity reporting. So accordingly, the topics can be finalized depending upon the role of the employees. Now, point number 6 is more about how are you practically going to implement your point number 3 and 4. That is, if you have written in your policy that you are going to do KYC, you are going to take XYZ documents, okay, are you actually doing that? So that is point number 6. We are going to discuss point number 6 in detail. So I'll just move ahead with point number 7, that is name screening. Once you have the ID documents, you can screen the customers through the screening software. Now, in screening, just for everybody to know, the TFS guidelines were amended recently in July 2025. So the name of the report, which was earlier fund freeze report, is now confirmed name match report. The instances where you do screening has changed. So various amendments have been done in the TFS guideline, which impacts the policies and procedures, and how you do CDD is impacted. Okay, but again, that's altogether a very separate topic, and I'll need like more 1 hour to talk about that, but I'll not talk about that right now. But this is just for everybody's information. The TFS guidelines were updated recently, and it affects a lot of things like your policies, procedures, how you will do screening, what are the reports you will file, the thresholds, everything has been amended. Point number 8 is about customer risk assessment. Once you have taken the required KYC documents, you have screened them in the software, the next step is assessing the risk of your customers. So let's say you have, like, I'm your customer. I come to you, my nationality is, let's say, Australia. Okay. Now I want to buy an asset. I am not a PEP. I am buying that asset through mortgage. Now my nationality is not under grey list, blacklist, etc. The kind of business I am into is not something which is under red flag. So if you will look at all of the aspects like my nationality, what I am into, what kind of transactions I am doing, whether I am doing it through bank transfer, cash, you will come to know that I am maybe low risk or medium risk for your organization. But if there are certain points, if we change it, like I become a PEP, okay, a foreign PEP, again, the risk would be different. Okay, so that is point number 8 is about customer risk assessment. So if you have 100 customers, then it's like you will have a list which will say that out of this 100, how many are low, how many are medium, and how many are high. And we must bifurcate our customers on the basis of the risk. Once customer risk is done, the next point is ongoing monitoring. Now, ongoing monitoring is basically our responsibility to make sure that the customers that we are dealing with, okay, we are aware about various aspects of our customers, like their ID document is updated. If it's a corporate customer, their trade license is updated. KYC form that we have, that is updated. So we have to make sure that all of our active customers, or let's say even previous customers, okay, because as per the TFS guide, you are also required to make sure that you are screening them till 5 years. Okay, so that is one of the added responsibility on all of the organizations, which is huge, of course. And there are a lot of FAQs also which are added to TFS guide, which are very helpful. So sorry, again coming to ongoing monitoring. Ongoing monitoring is we just have to make sure that the customers that we are dealing with, the documents which we have are updated. The information is updated. We are screening them on a regular basis. Customer risk assessment is done on the regular thresholds which we have documented in our policy. Point number 10 is about regulatory reporting. If we are required to report certain transactions, okay, like suspicious activity, suspicious transaction, we are doing that correctly as and when such event occurs. Okay, there are certain obligations on specific industries like dealers in precious metals and stones to file TPMS. Then for real estate agents and brokers, you have RER report, real estate activity report. So yes, this all are event-based reports, but if they occur, you have to report that. In addition to your regulatory reporting, there are certain other obligations also, like preparation of semi-annual report. Okay. Then making sure that your policies, procedures, risk assessment are updated on an annual basis. Okay, and if there are any changes in the law, okay, then the impact must be done, or I would say the required amendments, updation must be done for your AML CFT policies and procedures also. So again, if TFS guides have been changed, that is going to impact your policy and procedure, so that needs an update. Next is record keeping. So the obligations of maintaining the records, details about the transactions, reports that we filed, our past policies, current policies is for 5 years. We have to maintain the records for a period of 5 years. For other zones like DIFC, ADGM, the requirement is 6 years. And the last is independent audit. So we have to get our entire AML CFT framework audited by an independent person. Okay, so they will help us basically to understand first is whether our policies and procedures are as per the law, and second, if the policies and procedures are as per the law, are we actually implementing in our organization? Let's say I have a policy but at the end I'm not following it, so what's the point in having policy? So again, that's a non-compliance basically. So independent audit will help us to understand that what are the gaps. So now coming to the main topic, that is KYC. Now KYC actually is an abbreviated form of know your customer. This is something which is to be implemented by the DNFBPs. Now you all know what DNFBP is, who falls under that definition. VASPs and financial institutions. Basically KYC is done by all of them to identify their customers, like whom are they dealing with. Yeah. So there are certain roles that KYC plays. KYC acts as the first line of defense. Now let's say I come to you and I'm your customer, okay, but you don't know that whom you are dealing with. I say that I am, let's say my name is Deepika, okay, but I'm not showing my ID document to you also. But how will you believe that the person who is talking to you is the same person or who is the beneficiary of that service? The law also tells us that, let's say if you onboard somebody, but if you are unable to identify or locate that person, in case if there are suspiciousness, then our process are not correct. Okay, so KYC is basically acting as your first line of defense. They are going to help you to identify that who you are dealing with. If I'm Dipali and I say I'm Dipali, then I have my proper ID proof also that okay, my name is Dipali. So that is the way how you establish the true identity of a customer. If you have corporate customers, that will help you to identify like the ID document that they share. Now legal persons or corporates, they will have trade license copy, certificate of incorporation. So that will be helpful for you to understand that where this company is registered with, who is the supervisory authority. And once we have this ID documents in place, we will be able to screen them correctly. We'll be able to do their adverse media verification. We'll be able to understand the associated risk to that person. The identity verification process. Okay, once you get the ID. Now, what ID it could be passport, it could be driver's license, Emirates ID, etc. When you get this document, the next step is to verify them. Now, verification can be done in two possibilities: offline verification, manual verification, or online verification. So now, if in UAE there are various tools which are available like UAE Pass or something like that, where you are referring to make sure and check that a person, if they are sharing a particular document, whether that is right or whether that's a fake document. Offline verification would be, like I am your customer. I mean, you are onboarding me. Okay, I met you. We are having face-to-face interaction. I'm showing my passport to you. So basically, you have verified my passport. You've actually seen the original passport. Though you have a copy, but you have seen the original one. So that is also one of the way by which you will verify manually. Once you have the documents in place, the next step would be like screening, risk assessment, ongoing monitoring, and making sure that we are maintaining the record. So the next topic is about what are the documents that you can take or seek when you are onboarding a corporate entity or it is a natural person. So for identification, ideally you should seek for a corporate. It has to be like your certificate of incorporation, memorandum of association, articles of association, trade license copy. So these are the things which can be accepted as the identification proof depending upon where that particular customer is located. So accordingly, your list of requirements might also change. Not every company have a trade license, or not every company will have certificate of incorporation. Every country's rules and regulations are very, very different. So accordingly, the identification documents must be sought. For address verification, the possible options you have is utility bill. If you are seeking utility bill, it should not be older than 3 months. Municipal tax record, property purchase or rent agreement, bank statement, insurance policy. But again, we'll always suggest to go for utility bill. The rest are the options you have, but you should stick to utility bill as much as like you can get it. Yeah. Now let's talk about the memorandum of association. Why do we seek MOA? MOA has the details about the shareholders, like which person is holding how many shares. So one of the requirement of the law is identifying the UBO, that is the ultimate beneficial owner. So in order to identify that, one should seek memorandum of association or maybe register of members in order to understand who is the person who is going to be ultimately benefited by a particular transaction. Information, as in if you are onboarding a corporate, you must understand how their organization structure is. Who is the senior management, who is the shareholder, who are the directors. There are certain cases where there are like big companies and they have like multiple shareholders and they have assigned or authorized a specific person to act on behalf of that. So such persons verification should also be done. They should also be screened. When it comes to natural person, information, if you will seek their ID documents like passport, Emirates ID or address proof, you will get a lot of information from that. But there are certain things which won't be written on a document like occupation, who is the employer. So these are the mandatory details that you have to seek, like name of the employer, address of the employer. So that should be documented. Now information and documents we are already aware. We also need to understand that when AML CFT law is applicable to us, the KYC formats that we have, okay, that should also be in line with the law. As I said, there are certain information which is not, I would say you cannot get it from the documents which are submitted. So KYC forms, designing those forms also as per the law is very, very important, that we don't miss out the information. Once we have given the draft KYC, I mean, in order to, for the client experience also, we cannot go back to them and ask every little detail. So that all those things should be pre-planned. So that will not even affect your business. So I would request everybody to use their cell phones, scan this QR and answer the quiz question. Okay. So I'll just wait for 150 responses and I will discuss the answer. Okay. So the question is, which of the following laws are part of the UAE AML Regulatory Framework? So 75% of you have answered all of the above, and I go with the majority. So basically all of the above is the correct answer. Federal Decree Law number 20 of 2018, Cabinet Decision number 10 of 2019, and Cabinet Resolution number 74 of 2020. They are associated with UAE AML Regulatory Framework. So moving on. So you should keep your cell phones handy because a lot of keywords are going to come on the way. Now that we've understood what are the documents that we will seek, we are now going to discuss it. When will we seek? What is the process or what is the time frame for conducting KYC? Okay, so the law tells us that whenever we are onboarding a particular customer, prior to onboarding, customer due diligence must be done. Now, customer due diligence is a wide term that includes KYC. CDD has 3 steps: KYC, screening, and risk assessment. So before we onboard a customer, the entire CDD process should be done. So ideally, KYC also must be done before we are opening a new account in that particular customer's name, we are signing any agreement for provision of some services, we are accepting any advance, we are paying any amount. So basically, if the transaction is initiated, any documents are signed, before that the KYCs must be completed. KYC documents, signed KYC form should be there. Screening must be conducted before the transaction is done. Customer risk assessment must be done before the transaction is done. Because in this entire process, there is a possibility that, when you complete the entire CDD, a customer might turn out to be as high risk. Then your document requirement will also change. You will need source of funds, source of wealth, etc. depending upon the kind of the transaction that they are doing. So that call you will have to take. Moving on. Now that we know what documents to seek, etc. We will talk about the mistakes that we do when KYCs are done. We don't have KYC CDD policies in place. We are not very clear. Let's say we get confused. So we keep on reading online. But actually all of these things should be the part of your company policy, where things are clearly mentioned. What documents to seek, in what cases you must do enhanced due diligence, everything should be documented. So your questions should have their answers in your policy. Due diligence is not completed. Many times people fail to do screening on time. They do it after the invoices are also issued. So that is also a mistake. KYC's form that you accept, that must be signed also by your customer. If you have any e-sign process, okay, like OTP verification, etc., that is a separate thing. But if you are having manual KYCs, it must be signed. Yeah. Documents are incomplete. Documentations, like for example, MOE is not taken, or address verification is not done, address proof is not there. So that is basically incomplete KYCs. The AML CFT law works on 4-eye review policy. So that means there has to be 2 persons. One who is preparing, second is the one who is verifying. So if authorizations are not done on KYC forms, or let's say risk assessment forms, that is not correct. We need to amend our KYC forms in such a way that we are fulfilling the 4-eye review policy also. So these are the deficiencies which are commonly seen. KYC forms are not signed, verification is not done. In case of high-risk customer, EDD is not done, documentations are incomplete or outdated. Yeah, policies and procedures are not up to the mark. So here we will discuss something about best practices for conducting KYCs. We know what KYC is. We know what are the mistakes that could possibly occur. So now let's discuss about what are the best practices. We have to make sure that the policies and procedures are there, existing in an organization. If they are existing, they must be in line with the regulatory requirement. If the law says that identification document should be taken, address verification must be done, address proof must be taken. I have come across certain policies that they take the leverage and just say that only identification documentation will be taken. So that is not the correct approach. Yeah, so the policies and procedures that we implement must be in line with the AML CFT law. One may, consider using identity verification tools, liveness checks, photographs, etc. in case if they want to. These options are also available now. Now, majority of the concerns which I have come across is that the customers are very hesitant in sharing the data about their ID documents, etc. So you have to comfort them, make them understand that this is the regulatory requirement, and in addition to that, you can also have data privacy policies also implemented in your organization. Proper servers, everything is secured so that there is no data breach happening in your organization. So that way you can, comfort and make sure that you're fulfilling your regulatory requirement. Okay. Then again, staff training is very, very important. What if a person knows how to use a software but they don't know how to disambiguate the matches? They just leave it that way. That's not the correct approach. If you are using a screening software, if you are searching Mr. ABC, if you have got 3 matches, you need to disambiguate them. You need to come up with a clear, I would say, difference that okay, why this is not a match or why it is a match, because that will change your decision whether you will onboard or you will not onboard. So this is very, very important. The person, the staff which is working in your organization, what their role is, depending upon that, proper trainings must be provided. After that, you have to make sure that all of these screening records, KYC, due diligence, that we are maintaining in our organization for a period of 5 years. KYC refresh. Now, majority of the industries which are there, let's say CSPs, accounting and auditors, or dealers in precious metals and stones who are into wholesale B2B market, their businesses is a very sticky business. So a person who once works with them, they are going to continue with them for a very long period of time. It's not going to be one-off transaction or an occasional transaction. So in such cases, you should make sure that yearly KYCs are done. Okay, you're just making sure that your KYC forms are getting signed, you're getting the latest documents. In UAE, many companies which are operating, their trade licenses are also gets expired in a year's time. So any which ways you will have to go back to them and seek the latest copy. So KYC refresh, rules regarding KYC refresh again should be in your policies and procedures. How frequently you will do it, what are the trigger points. Yeah. If some company changes the name in the middle of the year, the ideal approach is that we will send them the KYC form again and get the latest data. There is a possibility that even the UBO might change. Yeah. And the second is periodic health check. Periodic health check is basically we are checking what we have already done. So it will help us prepare for our audit. We will know what are the gaps by making sure that every 3 months or maybe every month we are doing a health check, or every 6 months we are doing a health check. If we come across gaps every 6 months, let's say, it will help us to be compliant in the next 6 months. So this proactively checking your AML health, okay, of your company's AML health is very important. The next topic is about how to identify the ultimate beneficial owners. Now, as per the law, the threshold which is set by the regulatory is 25% or more. Okay, so there are basically steps in how you identify your ultimate beneficial owners. Now, a natural person. Now, UBOs are always going to be a natural person. It will not be a company or not a legal structure. It is always going to be a natural person who will be holding the shares and who will be a UBO. Any person by way of ownership, if they hold more than 25% shares, directly, indirectly, okay, then that person can be, constituted as a UBO. Now, let's say if I look at the shareholding pattern and, by ownership, I'm unable to find out. The next step is by voting rights. That which of the individual has the maximum voting rights, more than 25%. So that would be the criteria. If even after applying ownership and voting rights, we are still unable to identify who the UBO is, then we will try to find out a person who has controlling rights in an organization. Okay. Now controlling rights here means that a person has the power to appoint majority of managers, whether it's appointment or it's dismissal. Any person who is exercising the ultimate control. So major decisions in the organizations are influenced by that person. That could be considered as the UBO. Now, after applying all of these three tests, that is ownership, voting rights, controlling rights, if we are still unable to reach who the UBO is, the last option is senior management we will consider. So they will be considered as the UBO. Again, I am emphasizing on the fact that a UBO will always be an individual. It is not going to be a company. UBO is a natural person. So you will have to reach to that one individual, going through all of these structures which are there to reach the person who is ultimately holding the stake in the company. When I say that senior management would be considered as the UBO when all of the above three tests fails, it's important to understand that there's a thin line of difference between first situation 1 where you apply the test and you don't find the UBO and then you consider the senior management. Second, where companies are not sharing the details of UBO. In such cases, you will not onboard them. So this is not a way out where they are not sharing the data and you consider the senior management as UBO. That is not the approach to be taken. All three tests we will apply. If we don't find anyone, then we will consider senior management. Are we clear? You can show that thumb or something like that, so I know that you guys are understanding. Okay. So because you said you are understanding, we have a quiz now. Okay. So I'll just wait for few responses, like at least 100, and then we will discuss the questions. Okay, so we have received approximately 130 responses. Okay, so I'll just quickly go through the questions. One second. Okay, so the first question, as per UAE AML regulations, what minimum ownership stake must a natural person hold to be classified as the ultimate beneficial owner? So 89% of you have said that it's 25% or above, which is right answer. 10% and above not, 5% and above not, 15% and above not. Regulations tell us it's 25% and above. But if you want to be very stringent in your own company and want to implement 5%, 10%, 15%, you can voluntarily do that. But the law gives you the framework of 25% and above. In which of the following circumstances should the KYC be conducted as part of CDD under UAE AML regulations? Okay. Again, at what instance we will do KYC or CDD? It's before opening the account, signing any contract, accepting any funds. Okay, so basically the answer is all of the above, which 80% or 87% of you have answered it correctly. Now this is a situation based question. You have just joined a financial institution as the compliance officer. Management has asked you to strengthen the KYC process. Which of the following approaches would be best reflect industry best practices? Okay, so 94% of you have selected the correct answer, that is establish clear policies, ensure regulatory alignment, use identity verification tools, conduct periodic KYC refresh, and train staff regularly. So this is the absolutely correct answer, that is 94% of you have selected, and I feel very good when you all select the right answers. So I think we all are going in the very right direction. Okay, now in order to stay updated or understand various aspects of the law, you can join this WhatsApp group. Okay, you will get regular updates on webinars, about screening software, about regulatory amendments, everything. So I'll just hold this QR for a minute and then I'll proceed further with the next part of the webinar. Okay, so the next part, restrictions on establishing business relationship under UAE AML law. So the law tells us that there are certain, relationships, or I would say the part where we are not allowed to establish business relation with them. We should not onboard them as our customer. Now, designated persons in UAE local terrorist list and UNSC consolidated list. So basically, the sanction list which is mandatory in United Arab Emirates, we should not onboard them. If for some reason due diligence was not done for a particular customer, okay, then such person should not be onboarded. If we are unable to identify the UBO, which we discussed in the previous slides, that if you apply all the 3 tests and then if you're still unable to find out the UBO because the structuring is done in such a way that nobody holds more than 25%, okay, in such cases you may consider senior management. But if a company or corporate is not purposely sharing the UBO information, you cannot onboard such companies. Shell or fictitious banks, okay, we cannot onboard them. Business with I would say anonymous business or pseudonyms. Basically, it's where there are certain, I would say, accounts which just have a number associated with them. They don't have a name. Okay, it's basically a short form of the name or a pet name, nickname, something like that, or a name which is not known, an identification document which doesn't give the information about that person. In such cases, you will not onboard them. You will onboard only such customers where identification is possible. You can refer their ID document, you know whom you are dealing with. So in such cases, you will not onboard, like sanctions individuals, CDD not completed, shell banks, etc. Now, how do you identify a shell company? Okay, now shell company is basically the one which might have a website. Okay, it shows that okay, it's very good, etc. But there is no actual operations happening. They don't have physical office. They have a virtual office. There are actually no business transactions. Generally, shell companies are formed just to facilitate banking transaction at times. This is one of the key things that we can keep in mind. There is no staff. Maybe just one person for the sake of name, which is added. A local person, possibility. UBO, you cannot identify. The structuring is done in such a way that even if you identify multiple the structures, complex business structures are there, you are still unable to identify who is the UBO. Now, a company which has no clear objective written on a website or let's say on the trade license, but they have presence in almost every part of the world. Okay, so these are few I would say signs of a particular company to be a shell company. Moving on, there are certain red flags also when it comes to performing KYCs. When you are onboarding a customer, what kind of resistance you might feel from openly from them, or you have observed certain suspicious activities. This one. The information that a particular person gives us in writing in KYCs, is not consistent with the information we find online through independent sources. That is also one of the red flags. For a particular corporate, the UBO information keeps on changing every 6 months, every 3 months. Okay, it's rotating basically. Same set of persons are coming and going. That is also one of the red flag. They are not, they are not cooperative in sharing KYC information. The activities which are written in the license and what we see in the website is not in line. They belong to high-risk jurisdictions. You find certain adverse media. They are into cash-intensive business. Cash-intensive business is basically where small transactions are done, but they all are done in cash. And in one day, they might have a huge cash transaction, but it's basically a combination of small and medium amounts. So that is cash, and those are happening in cash. So that's not accounted. The structure of the company is complex. Complex in the sense there are multiple subsidiaries, holding companies, which basically obscures you to find out who the ultimate beneficial owner is. If any of your customer is politically exposed person, you just have to be very careful when you deal with a PEP. So now the entire cycle, of what is KYC, what are the applicable regulations, what are the documents you will seek, what are the possible options that you can go for, and what are the deficiencies, good practices. Now we will discuss about remediation, or let's say that if you have a certain set of customers who are your active customers, you're required to perform KYC refresh. Again, that will be documented in your policy, that how frequently you will do the re-KYC process, like once a year. If you're doing it once a year, then what are the trigger points? I gave you an example that in the middle of the year, you've already done KYC, but within 6 months, the company changes the name. So you will again send the KYC forms. But there are companies whose there's no name change happening. Okay, but there is a possibility that the structure might change. Okay, their trade license getting expired. UBOs ID document are getting expired. Okay, so when you seek for the latest document from a particular customer, you are making sure that the money laundering, financing of terrorism and proliferation financing risk are controlled. Controlled in the sense, when you get a latest document, of course you're going to screen them. Okay, and when you screen them, if there are any threat risk which are associated to that person or a company, you will come to know. If you are alerted, you might file required report. If everything is okay, you would continue working with them. Okay, so that is why KYC refresh is also one of it's one of the important process. KYC is not a one-time thing that you onboarded, you did KYC and done, closed. No, that is not the case. We have to make sure the documents are updated. Yeah. Again, this will be the part of your internal AML CFT policy and procedures. The time gap between KYCs, CDD, risk assessments, how frequently you will do monitoring. So that all will be documented in your policies. And this might also change if there are any changes in the law. So again, policies to be amended, and that will directly impact your KYCs also. Why re-KYC of customers is essential? Now, this re-KYC, why is it essential? It's a very important question that we must ask, and we must answer that and implement in our organization. If I have, let's say, 100 customers, example, if I'm not monitoring them, I'm not doing re-KYC, I will not come to know if there are any changes in their profile. Okay, so by implementing your re-KYCs, okay, we are making sure that we are in line with the risks which are associated. We are in line with the regulatory requirement, because even law tells us that we have to do re-KYC. We are following our policies and procedures. In case out of my 100 customers, let's say 50 are from an X country, and now that X country is a part of FATF list. So again, that will also trigger, or that will change your thresholds or time period in which you are going to do re-KYC. So basically, re-KYC is an important part. It's not a one-time thing that you do it and forget about it. No, we need to make sure that the documents are updated, etc. So re-KYC, it's a very simple process. Once we have a register, okay, if we are using any software, they generally give a dashboard that they tell you that, okay, this particular company's, this document is going to expire. So even if you have that kind of tool in place, okay, well and good. Other option is that you maintain the register where, you get, the information about which all customers specific documents are getting expired. So in that case, first you will communicate to your client that, okay, this particular document is pending, please share us that information. They will share it, you will verify it. Once you receive it and verify it, you can then screen them and then perform the risk assessment. There is a possibility that today, I'm your customer, I gave you my passport which is from Australia. In your next re-KYC cycle, when you come to me and ask for the latest or updated passport, you might get my Canada passport. So the nationality will change. So these small things are very important, but we may miss out. So this is the process that ideally one should implement in their organization. If you have a software will automatically tell you that what are the documents expiring in the coming month. So you can be very proactive. You can have a proactive approach. Okay, and second is if you are managing it manually, again you can refer your Excels or registers that you have implemented. So best practices in re-KYC of customer is that, again, this all should be documented in policy. All of the questions that you have, okay, with respect to re-KYC, what documents should be taken, not taken, that answers are in your policy only if it is well drafted, it's well aligned with the law. So we must have proper rules and regulation as to how frequently we will do re-KYC. How are we going to maintain the record? Maybe we have the procedure that, all of the older documents will prepare a folder, let's say archive. So I have all of the previous documents, but I'm seeking the latest one. We must have proper resources in our organization. And again, those resources must be trained as to what is the process we are following in our organization. Every organization is different. Their record keeping process is also different. In fact, file naming systems are also different. So if possible, you can also implement a KYC software. Now there are ample of softwares available. Okay, and we have RapidAML also, which has KYC inbuilt in the software. Take a risk-based approach wherever you feel that the risk is high with respect to a specific customer. You can voluntarily do KYC more frequently. And it's always important that we communicate with the customer. Okay, we should tell them that, okay, if we are asking for certain documents, there is a reason why we are asking. These are the regulations. That is why I need this. So even they will understand their need and they will be very cooperative with you. So again, this is the last quiz for the day. So I would request you all to scan the QR and we will discuss the answers. So I'll wait for a few more responses and I will discuss the answers. Okay, so the first question. According to UAE AML law, you must not establish a business relationship with whom? So the options were shell or fictitious banks, customer using anonymous names or pseudonyms, persons or entities on UAE local terrorist list or UNSC consolidated list, or all of the above. So 94% of you have answered it correctly and it is all of the above. So you cannot establish business relationship with them. The second question. Which of the following is not considered a AML CFT red flag in KYC process? inconsistent in KYC information, cash-intensive business, high-risk jurisdictions, and the last option is customer operates in a low-risk regulated industry and transparent ownership. So yes, again, the last, that is customer operates in a low-risk regulated industry with transparent ownership, is the correct answer. 91% of you all have answered it correctly. So that's a very nice thing. Now that we have covered about what are the AML regulations, what is KYC, what documents to seek, what is screening, and we have an upcoming webinar on 21st of August on name screening. We can also attend that. You will get a lot of information about how practically screening is done. And now I will ask Arun to take up and give the closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Dipali. So we'll wrap up now. Just before we wrap up, I want to extend a huge thanks to Dipali for leading today's session on KYC. Her insights and practical guidance have been incredibly valuable, as I'm sure you all will agree with me. And I know many of you will be taking these learnings back to your teams and integrating them into your KYC process, hopefully. That said, we'd love to hear your thoughts on today's session. Your feedback helps us make these webinars more relevant and useful as possible. So simply scan the QR code on your screen and share your comments, whether it's something you learned today, a topic you'd like us to cover next, or ways we can improve. You can also use the form to request a personalized RapidAML demo or to schedule a meeting about our consulting services if that's something you'd like to explore further. We really appreciate you taking the time to do this, to access this form. So we'll just leave it on the screen for a couple more seconds so you all can access. If you'd like to go deeper, we'll let anybody in the audience scan this code if they'd like. So again, guys, this is a feedback form. You can share your feedback with us, or you can request a further meeting with us and the team. And we are keen to engage with you guys and begin the conversation with you about your KYC and compliance process in general. Moving on. If you'd like to go deeper into the topics that we've covered today, as well as some other topics in compliance, we have a range of resources available on our website, rapidaml.com. So articles and infographics that break down key compliance components, product updates to keep you informed on RapidAML's evolving capabilities, videos, ebooks, and event replays to give you on-demand learning. Our team has put in an immense amount of time and effort into creating these. Just want to make sure that you guys know that this is here. These resources are very useful. They're designed to help you stay informed and keep operationally ready. Whether you're refreshing your KYC process, optimizing screening, exploring new compliance technologies, visit rapidaml.com to access all of this. And finally, our last slide. On behalf of Factum, RapidAML, and NIEMA, thank you for your time today and your engagement, of course. We hope you're leaving with practical insights. If you'd like to see RapidAML in action, again, reach out. There's a bunch of contact details on the screen. We can arrange a personalized demo, as I said earlier. Compliance is a continuous journey, and we're here to help you stay ahead of both regulatory demands and operational challenges. Thank you all again, and we look forward to speaking with you soon. And perhaps I'll see you, some of you, in the next webinar on the 21st. Thank you very much. Take care, everyone. Goodbye.